The new best card of Master Duel is finally here, or by tonight based on when you're watching this video. Why is this card so good? Why is everyone using it? And also, why is it a bit confusing? We're going to go into tips, tricks, combos, and all that good stuff. So let's first find out how widely used is the card. Let's click on TCG or OCG stats here to go on over to Yu-Gi-Oh! Meta to see down here, overall popularity, second overall. And if we go to OCG, it is third overall. If we go down to the decks it's being used in, nearly every single deck. You see the column of the 0 at 0% for a lot of them. Almost every deck is loving this card. Same thing for OCG. It is all over the place. Oh my gosh, endless scroll. And you could even see the best decks using it, which are pretty much every single deck. Now, what is so good about this card? Well, first of all, it's not $124 like it is in the TCG. And we could click on rulings on Yu-Gi-Oh! Meta to even look at some more rulings and how the card works. But to make this more understandable, we're going to break this down through some replays. So first, let's read the card. If this card is link summoned using a fusion, synchro, exceeds, or link monster as material, you can target one card on the field or in either graveyard, banish it. Also, your monsters cannot attack directly this turn. So how easily is that made? Well, it's only 2 effect monsters, and one of them would want to be from the extra deck to get that additional effect of banishing a card on the field or in the graveyard from either side. And then the other additional effect is when your opponent activates a card or effect, you can target 2 face-up monsters from either field. One of them have to at least be from your side of the field, banish both until the end phase, and you can only use each effect only once per turn. So without further ado, let's hop right into the replays of what is good. How can you use this? We have a bunch of replays here, starting off with our first one, which is going to showcase all you need to make this is 2 effect monsters in any deck, and now you have it on the field and ready. So what's it going to do by itself? So right away, we're not using the effect of banishing on summon. We're going to use the secondary effect instead. So how is that considered disruption? Well, for a card like Albaz, they're going to activate. We're going to chain link 2 to the Albaz. We're going to banish it in response to it activating, and that is now disruption. They are now not going to be able to summon something like a Mirror Jade. So off the field you go, and then it comes back during the end phase. Of course, this is not reactivate. It's not considered a special summon when it comes back. Now top into another replay. We're going to be going into little number 2. Little number 2 is going to showcase what happens if we have 3 monsters on the field. Get 3 bodies on the field. What can Little Knight do? So we're going to be making an IP Masquerena. So that's going to be 2 bodies plus an additional monster we're going to use with the Masquerena to turn this into a double disruption play that any deck could perform. So let's see how that works. So the opponent's going to be making their play. They're going to be summoning a Snake Eye Ash. We're going to chain our Masquerena to link off into an SP Little Knight. They're going to be activating their Poplar. We're going to be chaining our Little Knight, not to banish both our cards, but we're going to banish a card on the field or in either player's graveyard. We're using the effect on summon. So goodbye to the Ash. That's the first effect. And then we're going to use the second effect in response to them activating anything from anywhere. We could then chain to banish 1 card on our field that's a face-up monster plus one of their monsters. So goodbye. That is our double disruption play off of an IP Masquerena plus another monster. Ooh, this is a good one. This is a good one. Great one. We're on summon number 4, right? Now we're on summon 5. This is where they could Nibiru. What is good with Little Knight versus Nibiru? You're about to find out. So we're going to make a Little Knight. Little Knight counters Nibiru. How so? Let's find out. They're going to activate Nibiru. Okay, well, we should Baron to Floor negate it. If you Baron to Floor negate it, Baron to Floor can only negate once while face up. Instead of using our Baron to Floor or our other monster, we could just use Little Knight to banish itself plus another powerful monster we control. They don't get tributed by the Nibiru, so let's see what happens. Banish. And now Nibiru resolves without an effect because the Nibiru states that it must tribute in order to summon itself onto the field. Tribute as many face-up monsters on the field as possible, and if you do, which it did not, special summon this card, then if it was special summoned, then summon a token. So all of those effects do not work against Little Knight. And you may be thinking, what if we had a 3rd monster? The Nibiru comes out tributing the 3rd monster, and then during the end phase, the Little Knight and the Baron to Floor still come back. But wait, there's more with these plays. Get ready. So the opponent's going to activate Raigeki. We're going to Baron to Floor, negate that Raigeki, mate, and then evenly matched. Holy moly, this card is nuts. Well, similar to Nibiru, use the Little Knight to banish your most powerful cards. You don't even have to banish itself. You could banish a Baron to Floor plus another powerful card, and then both powerful cards will come back in the end phase, but we just have the Little Knight. So, temporary banish. Now remember, we activated the negation effect of Baron to Floor, which states once while face up on the field. So it's no longer face up, it comes back. and now it can negate again. We were able to dodge Nibiru, negate a Raigeki, and then we're gonna be able to, with the same Baron to floor, negate again. So pop that back row, activate a Daruma Cannon, negate. I don't think so, mate. Little Knight is really good for countering a card like Impermanence. We have a Turbulence on the field. Turbulence, the main effect is set 4 cards in the deck, then you win the entire game, right? Well, what's gonna happen when you have an SP Little Knight? They're gonna activate their Imperm. Isn't the Elf better than Little Knight here? Because it would make it untargetable. Elf requires 3 monsters to summon. It's gonna be Monster 1, Monster 2, Link 2, plus the 3rd monster to make the Elf. Well, Little Knight is just 2 monsters. If you only have access to 2 monsters to make a Little Knight, that is in fact better than Elf, which requires 3 instead. We're gonna chain the effect of Little Knight to dodge the Impermanence, just like that. Dodge the Imperm, and then the effect goes through, set 4, then it comes back in the end phase, and then you, of course, win the duel. But you're maybe thinking, well, I'm not that dumb to use Impermanence if I see an SP Little Knight. So this play only works against dumb people. That is true and wrong. Let's see what happens here. So now you know you're not gonna wait for me to activate Turbulence. You're gonna activate Imperm early, all right? Because you're smart. All right, well, actually, you're no longer smart because I could play around that. Go into Promethean Princess, Reborn, no longer negated. Just like that, you got outplayed again. Whether you Imperm early or later, this is why a deck like Rescue Ace is going to become so much better, more so than other decks, through the use of Little Knight being able to protect your Turbulence. We're going to be showcasing another play. Let's see where we go with this. So we're going to be setting up our play to get our IP Masquerena and our Little Knight. Very good. And they're going to be summoning. So this is an interesting play where they're trying to trigger a Tearlament Fusion. And because we're the non-turn player, we're going to be the higher chain link on an optional trigger effect where their optional trigger will be chain link 1. Let's just watch what happens. So here we go. Turn player, non-turn player. Activate the turn player, activate the non-turn player, target from the graveyard, not just the field, banish, stop the fusion, and just like that, surrender. All right, let's see what is good here. Necro Valley, what is going on here? Necro Valley will prevent us from interacting with either player's graveyard. So what we're going to do is we're going to attack directly to get around the restriction. Now, what the heck was that? You're going to see unused cards now become used, like Clara. Any Link 1 where we don't need a 3rd monster on the field, we could just go into a Link 1, then go into the Little Knight to then banish a card in the field. So there's 2 things you want to note here. Something like this being good, or an Almirage if that's usable, but this is a good card because it doesn't have a restriction on the attack or the monster type of what you summon in order to perform a Link. So this will simply just be used to help make our SP Little Knight to trigger the effect of banish. Now, the banish effect has a restriction where it says, also, your monsters cannot attack directly this turn, but we already attacked. So does this mean we do not get to activate the effect after attacking directly? No, we can in fact activate and banish after attacking directly. So you want to banish in main phase 2 if you want to attack first. And if you have a monster that's unaffected from card effects, it will actually be unaffected from the effect of attacking directly because this affects the monsters and not the player. So that's something that's rarely ever going to come up, but worth noting. Let's get to another ruling with the SP Little Knight. We're gonna make the SP Little Knight, and then what is the situation with the second effect? We're using the second effect to banish itself plus a card the opponent controls. Now, if we read that effect, it says you have to banish both until the end phase. Because it's worded that way, it must banish both. If it does not attempt to banish both, it banishes none. So if the monster is unaffected and then the other is affected, it will still attempt to banish both. But if the monster it's attempting to banish is no longer on the field, it's not going to banish at all. So let's see what happens here. Link Karibo's going to dodge the banishment. So we wanted to banish the Ash. It got dodged. So now the SP Little Knight would banish itself, right? No, because the other monster we were attempting to banish is now gone. So it resolves, no effect, and then they're going to be able to fully make their plays, and we have no more disruption on the Little Knight. They're going to push us into the back row, and just like that, so any effect that would make the Little Knight lose one of the targets it's banishing, and then it's no longer good. So I want to talk to you about what's the best way to counter Little Knight. Well, the best counter to Little Knight is your own Little Knight. Little Knight counters Little Knight. If I'm going to summon Mo Yi, it wants to chain banish Mo Yi so I can't make a synchro. But if we first make our own Little Knight will completely counter their Little Knight. So let's see how we do that. We activate, they're going to chain banish. So this will stop us. We will still summon a token, but we're not going to be able to perform the synchro. Well, we chain our Little Knight to their Little Knight to banish our Little Knight and their Little Knight. Don't get confused here, okay? So now their little knight does not have themselves as a target on resolution, thus they cannot banish both. Can't banish both, you banish neither. Unless one of them are unaffected, we'll still attempt to banish both. So the Mo Yi not getting banished, Little Knight just countered Little Knight. Pretty good play, yes? So there you go. This is how do you counter the Masquerena into Little Knight. All you have to do is summon a monster that is 800 attack or higher to threaten the Masquerena. So what will happen is you, the controller of a Clayman, very powerful card at 800 attack, all you have to do is say, I end my main phase. And by ending your main phase, you're threatening the destruction of Masquerena by battle. So then the player controlling Masquerena, it's going to pop up on the screen saying, your opponent's attempting to end the main phase. Would you like to activate Masquerena? And when your opponent activates Masquerena at the end of your main phase, even though you think you ended your main phase, by activating a card, the game will then ask you, would you like to retain your main phase? So you could stay in main phase, and then you don't have to commit to battle phase or ending the turn. This is faking them out when you never intended to end your main phase, and then you retain it and make more plays. So we're going to see how we counter the Little Knight. So they're going to get the first effect of Little Knight, which will be a high priority to banish our Clayman, right? It's the only card they can banish. Now, the second effect of Little Knight, we have to fear it. If we activate a card effect, the Little Knight will be able to chain directly to the card effect to banish itself plus a card we control. So how do we counter it? Well, how about we just don't activate any card effect? So we have the summon of the Diablo Star, which is not an activated effect, even though there was no other card in the field to banish anyway. So this would not be chainable if there were a card to banish. So this will summon inherently through its own effect with no chain link activation. And then we could just optionally, I'm not saying it's the best play here, but if we do not want to get banished with Little Knight, we simply just don't activate the trigger effect of Diablo Star and then just go straight to battle phase and attack over it. That's it. This is not like a DPE where it could activate whenever. You as the opponent of Little Knight, you have to enable their Little Knight by activating something. So just don't activate anything and you get to kill it. Now it's gone for good. You don't have to worry about it, and then you can make additional plays in main phase 2. We have Snake Eye Ash searching for a Poplar. Poplar come forth and summon. Oh no, Daruma Cannon. A lot of players are struggling with how this card works. I have a video on how TCG players are cheating Tenpai players with this, and this scenario came up in the grand finale of a YCS where both players didn't know how this card works. Change as many monsters on the field face down, and then you get to send face-up monsters that remain on the field afterward. This has to flip down to then send the rest of the monsters to the grave. What would we do here? Well, the grand finale player was not thinking to banish the monsters that would be flipped face down to dodge the effect. Let's do it. We're going to chain banish the only monster that would have been flipped face down. Now, normally a lot of players would think, okay, you banish the Ash and Poplar, that means you send Little Knight to the graveyard. And that would be correct if any monster on the field whatsoever were flipped face down by the Daruma Cannon. So if there's only 2 monsters or less that could be flipped face down, use Little Knight to counter the Daruma Cannon. I've been seeing a lot of people complain about this card. How do you counter it? Well, whip out the Little Knight, and that's how you're going to counter it. And then, you could follow up from there. Send, summon, oak, go from there, pop off. This is what happens when you have a triple tactics talent versus a Masquerena going into a Little Knight. So get ready for this play. You're going to activate Triple Tactics talent, which is a non-target take control of an opponent's monster. So they're going to chain Masquerena to link off into the Little Knight. What happens here? Who activates the card? Does anyone activate the card? Well, this is showcasing to you that Triple Tactics talent could be a good counter to Little Knight if they happen to activate a monster effect within your main phase. So on the resolution, we take their Little Knight and we activate their Little Knight. Their Little Knight is our Little Knight. We activate their Little Knight because it is on our field as it was summoned, meeting the summon requirement and using a link monster, even though it was theirs. We then banish their original Sinful so they cannot use it for the next turn. Now, we can't attack directly, but I could normal summon anything like a hand trap and then turn it into our permanent Little Knight play. So very cool there. And now you know what to do. Take control of theirs, then turn it into your own Little Knight, and you are good. Now, on YugiOhMeta.com, under the cards page, we could click on the rulings to see many of the things we already covered. The first effect is a trigger effect, which activates the monster zone. Nothing interesting. This effect can be activated even if you already declared an attack directly this turn. We talked about that. When this effect resolves, additionally, at the time, you apply the effect that they cannot attack directly. That's fine, not a problem. It's continuously applied, the effect that makes your monsters not being able to attack directly, even if a new monster is summoned afterwards. So everything is affected, whether it's on the field in activation or not. Now, the second effect, which allows us to banish 2 monsters, is a quick effect that's activating the monster zone. You could not use it in the damage step. That's understandable. When your opponent activates a card effect, you can activate this card directly correctly in response. That's how that works. When this resolves, if both targeted monsters still exist, you banish both. If either of the two or no longer exists, the effect is not applied, and we showed that multiple times. That's very important to understand. If you apply banish both until the end phase, but either of the target monsters is unaffected by that effect, the other monster is still going to be banished. We also talked about that. And then if the monster banished by this effect returns to their owner's monster zones during the end phase of the same battle position, blah, blah, blah. Okay, nothing too crazy. Master Duel is going to automate that. Don't worry about that. And there you go. The related FAQ entries and some other additional questions if you want to look more into how the card works, all on YugiOhMeta.com. We also have a new guide, Melodious Guide. So if you want to learn on Melodious, as that may be coming soon. And also we got the tier list. You can look at the last week or by a certain set release or a certain date. You could do the custom dates, all that good stuff. We do the text, TCG, OCG, side deck, TCG, OCG, all that great stuff and more. What I've been learning recently is something like Melodious. So right here, I could see Melodious is doing quite well, which grabbed my attention here. So you also have the guide here you can click on. So these are the ratios for the deck to learn how to play the deck. And I'm also looking at the best deck filter. So by the best deck filter, if I want, I see that not everyone is using Herald of Orange Light. So why don't I search up that card? Orange Light under the best deck filter. And I want to see people playing less than one. Less than one, only one, the YCS deck itself. So that's interesting to see. And if we go on over to OCG, there are a lot more that are not playing the card at, one or none. So if we do equal or more, that's going to be this one. You can see that the card is limited to one in OCG. So these are great ways to search for this. You could also do this under the deck search filter here. You could search for anything. You could search by side deck if you want. So for example, let's look for the card and we're going to search by OCG because the card's not out on the TCG. So in the main deck, you're going to see these are decks using Chummy. But if we want to include the side deck, this will also now be decks using it in the side deck. So it's going to separate between the main deck or main and side deck. And you could do even more filters here. You could add additional cards. It doesn't have to just be one. It could be Chummy plus additional many other cards, a certain event you want to see that did well, and also continually be checking out the top TCG decks, the top OCG decks as they are being compiled every single week. Search by a certain event, sort by a certain deck list, branded voice list. We have 1 out of the 3 deck lists there. So let me know what you think and more. And someone in the Discord was saying, hey, I'm looking for a budget version of a deck. And I was like, okay, I got you. Even though I don't play the TCG, I could help you find a budget version. If we do TCG, sort by price, and we could even set a limit. Let's say you have $300. Only $300? Holy moly, that's a steal. So you can see the top decks at $300 or less than the TCG is Runic Stun. So a great deck if you want to make a lot of friends. That'll be a good one. There's a budget Tenpai deck. The deck itself is really not even that expensive. This is also with a Trident Dragon being valued at 63 market price value. This card's jumping up and down like crazy. So, Tenpai maybe is just the best deck to play on a budget. I'm also really liking the new Melodious guide we have on the website here. Melodious, look at this. Bloombox, absolutely amazing. Thank you for making this guide and allowing us to host it on the website. I'm going to scroll on down to the combos so you can see how in-depth this guide is. Holy moly, the ratios, we got combo lines. It even links on over to Dueling Book Replay, so that's very cool to see how to make your one-card plays and more. And there you go. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on twitch.tv/Dcade as the new pack goes live. We're also having a $1,000 MCS tournament this Saturday. Make sure you do not miss out on it, as I'm also going to be leaking the June pack for Master Duel. Let's go.